Issue 2, Julian's new job.
I stand before you tonight as a young American, a proud American, of a generation born as the Cold War receded, shaped by the tragedy of 9/11, connected by the digital revolution, and determined to re-elect the man who will make the 21st century another American century, President Barack Obama.
Meet Julian Castro, the mayor of San Antonio, Texas, here delivering the keynote address at the 2012 Democratic National Convention 2 years ago. The keynote is usually reserved for a rising star of the party, as it served President Obama himself when he delivered the keynote in 2004, 10 years ago. Castro has been tapped by the president to be Cabinet Secretary of HUD, H-U-D, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. When confirmed, Castro replaces current HUD Secretary Sean Donovan, and Donovan would head the powerful OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. Okay, Mayor Castro, a mini bio. Age 39. Castro has an identical twin brother, Joaquin, representing Texas's 20th District, who is in his first term in the U.S. House of Representatives. Julian's wife is Erica, with whom he has one daughter, Karina. Roman Catholic, Mexican-American descent, bachelor's, Stanford University, 1996, J.D. Harvard Law School, 2000, San Antonio City Council, 2001 to 2005. Private law practice, 2005 to 2008, Mayor of San Antonio, 2009 to the present, in his third term, which he won with 81% of the vote. San Antonio, by the way, is the nation's 7th largest city. So, what would Castro's experience as HUD Secretary be a stepping stone to? Supporters hope a number 2 spot on a presidential ticket, perhaps with Hillary Clinton, should she decide to run. Listen to Henry Cisneros on the matter, a former HUD Secretary himself. Quote, "It probably wasn't going to happen from the mayor's job. You have to have national positions of greater responsibility, breadth, and this begins that course." Unquote.
Well, that's what Julian is getting now. He's getting a cabinet job. Question, how about a Hillary-Julian ticket in 2016? Mort Zuckerman.
Well, you're halfway right. I think Hillary will definitely be leading the ticket. I don't know if she will select somebody like this. I think she is going to need somebody with a lot of experience as the number 2 person who can easily be seen as somebody who could take over the presidency. That seems to me is something that he lacks at this stage of the game, even though he's clearly a very talented political figure, and also because the Hispanic community is a critical community in the Democratic fold, and it's the most rapidly growing community in the country. So he's got a lot of political pluses, but I don't think it's going to rise to the level of the vice president.
David?
I think you make a very good point, and you know, the truth is that Hillary Clinton will be 69 at the next presidential election, so the vice presidency will be looked at very carefully. I've interviewed Julian Castro a couple of times as mayor of San Antonio. He's a smart guy. He's a centrist. He's pro-business. I mean, you have to be to run a city in Texas. He's not to the left of the party, and that's also another sort of factor that if they need someone who wows the liberal left of the Democratic Party on the ticket, he doesn't really give them that. You know, he's very much a kind of Clintonian, sensible business kind of guy.
Harvard?
Yeah, and he did some really smart stuff down in San Antonio, getting in the big business community. He's done things with like pre-K education, and to get that through, he roped in the biggest businesses in the city. You know, he's a sort of centrist, pragmatist.
The Latino vote, Pat, you got it?
Latino vote is growing.
And he's going to pull that vote, is he not?
He would clearly pull that vote, and the African American vote probably is not going to be as intense in 2016 as it was in 2012. But I will say this, John, he is somewhat youthful and callow, and I think with Hillary Clinton and all this talk about the brain problem and the health and the rest of it, they're going to want someone who will be able to step in as President of the United States in foreign policy, and foreign policy is going to be a big issue, and you don't learn foreign policy at HUD. Excuse me, but it's a second-rate cabinet office, and I don't know that it's really a stepping stone to the vice presidency.
Assuming that the ticket is as stated here in our hypothesis, do you think that Julian could deliver Texas?
No, he could come. He could do better in Texas, but I don't think they could deliver.
You
Texas.
don't think so?
But if he could, the game's over for the Democrats. Win.
Do you think so?
No.
Yes,
Do you think so?
I do think he can deliver Texas.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Do you
They have a
think-
huge.
And the proof that he couldn't is that a lot of Democrats in Texas were desperate for him to run for governor this year in 2014, and he passed on that because he knew that it wasn't time for a Democrat in Texas. Texas may well turn blue at some point, but it's going to be another 10, 15 years.
I agree with that. I don't think that, and I also agree that he's a little too young and inexperienced to be the vice president, especially with Hillary's age and potential health concerns.
And,
I don't know.
Richard Nixon was younger, and so was Theodore Roosevelt, I think. No, he'd be 40. So was John Breckinridge, John.
And he's
He's
a
been
very
a very
smart guy.
successful mayor.
Yes, he's
Mayor
a
is
very
one thing.
intelligent
It's a
and a
big
very
state.
competent
We make
guy.
his case
It's the
and
seventh
let's
biggest
face
state
it,
in the
he's a
nation.
very-
right.
he's a
And-
Oh, excuse me, the biggest state in the nation.
And the president we have now was not exactly very experienced when he became president. But
Which
I
is
think
one of the
voters
reasons why
look
they
for
won't have
that.
it.
San Antonio, correct me, is the seventh biggest
The
city.
city,
in the
that's
nation.
right.
Seventh.
And he
in
was
the
a very,
nation.
he was a
of
very,
all the
that's
cities.
right. He was a very good mayor. He's got, as I say, a real appeal to the Hispanic community. But I
Now
don't
he's
think
going to be a cabinet member. You got it? We got
Yes,
2 years to
it's
go.
hard.
I
And
understand.
he will make
It's
some
not
news
a-
as a
it's not a
cabinet member.
high-profile
as
cabinet.
it's neither.
Yes.
It's
At
not
HUD,
the-
so what?
You got a likelihood of a scandal.
You
there.
know,
got
you know,
very
you know
small
cabinet
likely-
members with your inexhaustible
All right,
history.
Jack Kemp was HUD secretary, but he didn't go anywhere with it. But I'll tell you,
He got onto the ticket underdog.
he got onto the ticket. Yes, he did. But that was because of 20 years in Congress
But
before
HUD,
that.
HUD commands a very wide constituency, whether you believe it or not.
But when you're
Housing and
sitting
urban
on top,
development.
What happens at HUD? Only scandals happen under those kinds of
And the
institutions.
last
Sean.
San Antonian who took over HUD, things didn't end very
He
well
had some
for him.
problems too.
Yeah.
A national convention is coming along, too.
It's the country's best Mexican food, San Antonio.
This
That's a
guy
big
can
thing.
whip up a storm
you
at a
are.
convention.
Well,
And he already has.
four-
And he already has.
He was very high profile in 2012 when he came
That's
to speak,
right.
and,
Okay.
and more so
I
this
think
time.
you want to
I think.
reconsider your answer to this exit question. Is Julian Castro a rising star? Or better still, will that ticket materialize? Yes or no?
He's a rising star, but that ticket will not materialize.
Rising, but not fast enough, so no,
Not fast enough? 2 years to go?
it won't happen.
The same, yeah, rising but not on the ticket.
He's certainly a rising star, but as indicated before, and following your lead, of course, John,
You don't
he's
believe
not
in
going to be
miracles?
the. I do believe in miracles, but not that way.
It's possible. Issue 3, censoring the net.
In theoretical terms, in larger terms, this is symbolic because, as we said, the U.S. pioneered the Internet. It has always been the steward of the Internet. The Internet is informed by American values, the First Amendment, free speech, no censorship, and really trying to keep the flow of information as free and open as possible. Not every country views these issues in the same way. There are a lot of countries that think that the government should have a stronger hand in the Internet. Certain types of content are banned in many countries, including close allies of the U.S. if it's offensive to a religious group or minority. There's a host of different ways that these freedom of speech issues are handled.
In March, the Obama administration alarmed proponents of an uncensored Internet by announcing that the U.S. would transfer oversight of the web to an international body. Since 1998, governance of the Internet has been the domain of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, known as ICANN. It was established by the U.S. Commerce Department in 1998 and operates independently of government control from its California headquarters. ICANN sets policy for domain names and Internet addresses, the basic architecture that lets users connect to servers and websites. In April, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff convened an international conference, Net Mundial, where international delegates presented proposals like this one from China, quote, "National sovereignty should rule Internet policy and governance. Each government should build its own infrastructure, undertake its own governance, and enforce its own laws," unquote. And this from Saudi Arabia, quote, "International public policy in regard to the Internet is the right of governments, and that public policy should be developed by all governments on an equal footing," unquote. Russia's delegate called openly for the United Nations to take over the Internet. Some warn that UN control will lead to the taxation of Internet users. Quote, The United Nations has long craved the power to tax, and the Obama administration's decision to give up U.S. oversight of ICANN may end up giving the UN that power, a global bureaucracy that will have the power to reach into every pocket on Earth, unquote. The House of Representatives is considering legislation to bar the administration from taking action pending an assessment of the impact of transferring ICANN by the Independent Government Accountability Office.
Question. The Internet was invented by America. Is President Obama making a mistake giving away that precious patrimony to some yet-to-be-determined international body? David Rennie.
There's definitely a way that you could do this would be a disaster. Clearly, we've heard, if you gave the Chinese and the Saudis what they wanted, that would be a disaster. You can overstate the importance of this thing, ICANN, which at the moment has a link back to the Department of Commerce and the American government. It's not really control of the internet. It's the kind of the plumbing and the pipe work and some of the technical stuff. But definitely, there are forces afoot who would like to grab more government control of the internet. But the reason that America is on the back foot, unfortunately, is our friend Edward Snowden and the NSA revelations. They turbocharged the politics of this. Remember that Brazil was very angry about being spied on. That was one of the motivations for the Brazilians to push as hard as they did for this international gathering, where everyone piled in on the Americans and attacked the Americans. The Germans were very upset, so there's talk of a European internet. So America is on the back foot.
I have this on the Brazil conference to which you just alluded. At the Brazil conference last month, China asserted that when ICANN seized control, the internet should be broken up, with each nation controlling its own portion of the internet highway, quote-unquote highway, and setting its own rules and laws for internet users. Can you speak to that? I ask you, Susan.
We are one of the freest, if not the freest nation when it comes to the internet. If we break it up, let every country run its own, that's going to be less internet freedom universally. I think it's terrible that we're ceding control. We don't own it. We have contractual oversight over the internet through ICANN, and I think it's a terrible idea to surrender it, especially when you have countries like China saying how they want to limit it. In Saudi Arabia, none of this is good for freedom.
The key body here is the UN's International Telecommunications.
That's the question. Why would you do this?
Yeah, I know it. Look, John, why would you do this when you've got, look, if the Chinese are going to do certain things in their country, fine. We're moving into a world of increasing nationalism, and also where the First Amendment is really not respected all over the world, and here we have this thing. Why would you share it with 192 nations?
Predictions, Pat.
John, the subject we talked about, global warming and all the rest of it, I don't think it's even going to be an issue in the year 2016, or a major issue, because I think the Democrats realize that millions of Americans, middle Americans, simply don't believe it's happening, and they don't want the solution the left is proposing.
Susan.
I'll talk taxes. There's a tax bill that's fallen apart in the Senate and the House. I think that the Senate will get together in June and pass a tax cut bill with 50 or so tax cuts, and eventually we'll pass the House.
David.
I think we will not see immigration reform done this year.
What?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that we will not see immigration reform, so I completely agree with what he just said.
You want to give him a prediction?
I have to do two?
Well, give it to him.
Oh. You pay me for two?
Wait, I'll add to that, but you'll see administrative executive action on immigration.
The prediction is the enthusiasm gap between Republican voters and Democratic voters over the looming midterm elections, currently measured at 10% in favor of the Republicans, will continue to grow in size, intensity, and impressiveness. Bye-bye.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.